our tax dollars expropriate land to build a highway that we don't really need, to sprawl housing that really doesn't make financial sense. I was at a talk when I was a city councilor, and it said that new subdivisions and sprawl housing cost 2.5 times the amount for infrastructure. So building roads, sewers, electric hookups, natural gas, which is what we're talking about lately, costs 2.5 times the amount for municipalities. So municipalities can't afford it, and it lands again on the property tax base, and that affects seniors and homeowners as well. So we end up paying for it, and it leads to another affordability issue. So we are here to talk about a solution that doesn't require this 2.5 amount. That's infill. We know sprawl is expensive in so many ways. Not only does it jeopardize food and water and our well-being, it only services a certain group of people who would afford to buy these homes, and it only services a certain kind of developer who really are the Ford insiders. These big builders who build this kind of housing are really the major donors for the Ford government. It's not, Joe Schmo or Jane Schmay or Mohammed who owns a building and wants to put apartments in the backyard and in the basement, right? And these are units we could bring online right now. Sprawl will take 10 years. And I think we all know that this is a situation that is only getting worse, and we need to address it now. So I'm going to pass it over to my friend and colleague, Mike Schreiner, to tell us all his nitty gritties about his bill. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, well, thanks, Aislinn, for just providing the context of just the housing crisis that we're facing, and quite frankly, the climate crisis, which is made worse by the sprawl agenda as well. And that's exactly why I tabled the Building Homes You Can Afford in Communities You Love Act. So we can quickly ramp up homes that can help bring down the soaring cost of housing. Homes that will create more options for renters and homeowners by legalizing fourplexes, 4-story apartments as of right in urban core existing neighborhoods across the province, and 6 to 11 story missing middle buildings along major transit and transit corridors. That's how we can quickly ramp up housing supply without forcing people into long, expensive commutes, without paving over our farmlands, our wetlands, and our forests, which are so vital to our food security, our food and farming economy, protecting us from extreme climate-fueled weather events, and just providing places where we love to go with our families. And also, by building gentle density and missing middle housing, we can breathe more life into our communities, more vibrancy into our communities, supporting local businesses, and just making more spaces available for people to be connected and less lonely. And we can do it in a way that's less expensive for municipalities, because as Aislinn said, we don't have to build all this new infrastructure. We can utilize our existing infrastructure, which then makes our communities more affordable for people. But instead of focusing in on these key solutions that were put forward by the Housing Affordability Task Force a couple of years ago, the Ford government's really wasted the last 2 years focused on opening the Greenbelt for development, imposing expensive sprawl on municipalities onto farmland, really to help Ford, like wealthy Ford connected insiders, cash in billions. Meanwhile, the housing affordability crisis gets worse. And so I'm proud to say that we've had housing advocates like More Neighbors Toronto say that endorse our bill and say it is critically important to address the housing affordability crisis we're facing. We've had young progressive activists saying we need to say yes to housing by legalizing housing. And we've also had organizations like the Ontario Chamber of Commerce and the Ontario Realtors Association endorsing the bill, because it's just a common sense solution that appeals to people across the political spectrum because it makes sense. And this is one important component of many solutions the Ontario Greens have put forward to support people addressing the housing crisis across the housing continuum. So this is in addition to proposals we put forward to protect renters, to push the government to build deeply affordable nonprofit, co-op, and social housing, and permanent supportive housing. Proposals we put forward to drive speculators out of the market, because we believe housing is a human right and homes should be for people, not speculators. And so as we've traveled around the province, we've had people sign postcards, sign petitions, and just push the government to support Bill 156 to legalize housing. And so I just want you all to know that, you know, we're going to ask you to continue doing that. Write your MPP, go to gpo.ca and sign our petition, because Aislinn and I want to bring your voice to Queen's Park, and we're looking forward to your questions and the conversation we can have tonight, so we can better represent you when we go back to Queen's Park in the morning. And so I think James is going to moderate our Q&A session for us. So just a reminder that you can submit your questions through whatever social media feed you're watching tonight's event on. And Aislinn and I would be happy to answer your questions and listen to your ideas.
Yeah, so we've got a couple here. We've got one that says, does this bill include stipulations to protect affordable housing? And how much supply do you think these legislative changes could add?
Yeah, so one analysis that was done by a company called Clip Homes in conjunction with a number of academics who study housing, that if only 18% of existing single-family homes in Ontario in core urban boundaries became a fourplex, that would be 2 million homes. So the province's goal that all four parties have agreed to is to build 1.5 million homes over the next decade. We could not only build 1.5 million, we could build 2 million if only 18% of homes in Ontario would become a multiplex. And I know that that's probably a number that's higher than what will actually happen, which is exactly why we're putting forward another part of this bill, is to build 6 to 11 story apartment and condominiums along major transit and transit corridors, because we know that we need to increase supply not only for home ownership but also for rental spaces for people. This bill is likely, so it doesn't have the affordability protections that we're pushing for by pushing the government to get back into building deeply affordable homes. So I want to be really clear. We need to have market solutions and non-market solutions. So this provides the market solutions to build the housing supply we need to drive down the soaring costs of housing, both rental and ownership opportunities. And at the same time, we're going to continue to push the government to get back involved in building deeply affordable homes. 93% of the deeply affordable nonprofit, co-op, social housing, and permanent supportive homes that are built in Ontario were built before 1995. What happened in 1995? The Harris government cut funding on the heels of the Chrétien government federally cutting funding for nonprofit, co-op, and social housing. And as a result of that, you've seen the crisis getting worse and worse. So we need to get back to what it was like before 1995, where government supported deeply affordable homes resulted in about 20,000 housing starts a year in Canada. And we're going to continue to push hard for that, because we need supply of homes and we need supply of deeply affordable homes.
Got another question here that says, didn't the government already legalize triplexes? Do we really need to go further? Maybe you could take this one, Aislinn. As I recall, Kitchener is one of these municipalities that's made this step already.
Yeah, as a city councilor, what we did actually almost exactly this. So we call them major transit station areas, and it created density around transit. So, you know, we got rid of parking minimums. We help people build a little higher in those areas because we know if people don't have to rely on a car, they can be close to transit. That's really where we want a lot of housing to go, so we can get people into a lifestyle where they don't need a car. But yeah, the fourplexes in Kitchener, we have what's called an ADU. So what it means is somebody could build a tiny home in their backyard, you know, additional dwelling unit, you know, and it's really started to pick up. It started off slow, but it's picked up since then. One of our staff at the GPO, for example, partnered with a friend and built a home in the backyard. So what it does, and I've talked to a lot of homeowners and builders, even like people who have, you know, one of those old red brick homes where the attic's a perfect apartment, the main floor, the basement, but they have a huge lot out the back, you know, laneway houses. So it kind of opens it up for that. Or even when you have a single wartime home that's on a big lot, I've seen them knocked home and turn into 2 duplexes. So, you know, I think we want as much wiggle as we can get, because there's lots of folks that I've talked to. They're not super rich Mattamy home developers, but they want to create more units on the lot they have, either for their personal use, to support their mortgage. You know, I have a friend who's kind of put a few units in to help them pay their mortgage, or because they have family that wants to live there. So there's lots of rationale for why the fourplex just takes it one little step further, because I think we all have been in cities where there's a house on a huge lot where there could easily fit a tiny home, or even a two duplexes, kind of semis. So that's kind of the idea.
We got another one here that's an interesting one. Why are we not being more ambitious with our housing reforms like British Columbia has been?
Yeah, so you'll have to ask the Ford government why they haven't been that ambitious, but I think a lot of it's because if you look at most of the proposals they've put forward, they've really been designed to help wealthy, well-connected insiders cash in billions of dollars. I mean, that's what the $8.3 billion Greenbelt scandal was all about. That's what the imposition of sprawl on to municipalities is all about. And so here we are putting forward, you know, an ambitious proposal that could easily lead to building 2 million homes that people can afford in the communities they know and love, and do it in a way that I think Aislinn describes that is so powerful, because in some ways, by legalizing housing, we're turning the development paradigm upside down, and we're actually empowering citizens to become developers, because it's possible for a citizen to develop a fourplex, or it's very hard for a citizen to imagine developing a major subdivision. And then on the ambitious side around building deeply affordable homes, I've been really disappointed in the debate at Queen's Park, where when we bring up the fact that even Scotiabank's report says we need to build 250,000 deeply affordable nonprofit co-op social permanent supportive housing in Ontario. And when we in opposition bring this up, the government accuses us of being socialist or communist. And this is just Scotiabank. It was Bill Davis government that used to build a lot of government supported nonprofit and co-op housing. So I think it just makes sense. And we need to have that kind of ambition. But it also then means that the big wealthy Ford connected insiders aren't going to be, who are speculating on land, aren't going to be able to cash in at our expense. But we simply can't afford it anymore. As Aislinn said, it costs 2.5 times more to service sprawl than to build within our existing built up areas.
Ashton, do you have any thoughts on more ambitious, crazier housing solutions that we could take?
Yeah, like when we were going door to door, I really appreciate how BC has kind of put a leash on Airbnbs, for example. I read a stat recently where for every 1% increase in Airbnbs or short-term rentals. There's a 2.5 times increase in rents. So, and even just the emotional side of that, I was in a neighborhood and a whole triplex had been vacated. Basically, they evicted the tenants and they turned it into a short-term rental situation, just an investment property. Somebody wants to make more money, but it's not housing for people. And the neighborhood was so aghast. They're like, that was Mary Margaret, and they kicked her out of her place and she had nowhere to go. And, we used to have tea together and we would walk our dogs. Like all of these little ways in which we erode communities by focusing on housing as a commodity versus a human right really changes the connection of neighborhoods and disconnects people and separates us in a way that's not healthy and doesn't build community. So I would like to see us move in that direction. I'm working on a private members bill that focuses a lot on protecting affordable housing. We have a lot, and I know nationwide for every affordable unit we build, we lose 15 in the private sector. So not only are we doing a crumb job of not building enough deeply affordable housing or infill housing really, but we're also doing a really crappy job of protecting the affordable housing we have. And that's what I think the BC government, I think one community, New Westminster, did a really bang up job about stopping rent evictions, and they went from like 900 a year to like 1. We know it works. There's so many things that work, but again, we're trying to talk to a government that is listening to a very different group of people instead of the people of Ontario.
Speaking of maybe the way the government is listening or not, someone's wondering, they saw that Bill 156 was discharged to committee instead of going to second reading. What do you guys think of that? And he's also saying that feels like it lets them use the committee to water it down rather than voting it down.
Yeah, well, I think it's just a threat to democracy, really, when a majority government uses their power to avoid debate. And, discharging the bill to committee means it will continue to move forward. And we're going to ask all of you to help us put pressure on the government that it receives committee hearings and comes back for third reading. But I also thought people deserved an opportunity for the debate to happen at second reading. I can't tell you how many people, I was just thinking when we were in Kitchener, there's a Yimby Waterloo region group that was so excited about this bill and having it debated in the House, because I think it's an important conversation that we need to have about, like, let's build communities with homes that people can afford. Let's build stronger, more connected neighborhoods. I was visiting a multiplex in Guelph where people were so excited. They were all seniors living in it. And they were excited because they had a place to downsize in their neighborhood. So they didn't have to leave their neighborhood. So they could still be with their friends. They could still go to the cafe they love to go have coffee with together. But yet it enabled them to downsize. And then a family, a growing family, can move into their single family home. But yet they could all still stay in the same neighborhood. And I think those kinds of solutions and those kinds of stories are so important to just as part of the debate process at Queen's Park, for people to sort of imagine that we can build better, we can bring home better for our communities, and we can tell those stories in debate. And that's not going to happen now, but it doesn't mean we can't continue to put pressure on this government to bring the bill forward for committee hearings, and people can come to Queen's Park or virtually connect with Queen's Park and tell their stories about why it's so important to them to build homes that they can afford in the communities they love. And then hopefully we can push that bill through committee and bring it back for third reading. But I'll have to say I'm disappointed that we're not going to have an opportunity to tell those stories at second reading debate.
Personally, I've been really disappointed about how this government has really moved away from democracy. Like we've seen them interfere with the OEB, like the Ontario Energy Board hearings, get involved in appointing judges, kind of silence opposition wherever they can. So to me, I mean, I think it shows that we're really on the mark because they don't want to face what they're up against, you know. So on as much as it's a punch in the gut, really on the first week, it's also a testament to the amazing work of Mike and the team to kind of craft legislation that makes total sense that any party could get behind, but they're kind of threatened by because it disrupts the apple cart. You know, we've got a lot, 70% of the province is single family dwelling zoning, right? That's a lot of change if we open that up. So while change is important, I think we all know that we need change. I think it also is troubling for some. And I think that's what the PC government is afraid of. But really this anti-democratic way that they have is just, I hope folks in the province see what it is. And so that will shift the attitude toward this, this government.
Got another question here about what do you call affordable housing? 1,500 or 2,000 for one bedroom is not affordable. Yeah, maybe speak to that.
Yeah, I'll start and then I'll let Aislinn, because Aislinn's had a long time as a social worker and a city councilor. But my feeling is affordable housing is like maximum 30% of your income. And I was disappointed when the Ford government changed the definition to 80% of market, because the question is right. I mean, if $2,000 is what market rent is, 80% of 2,000 is not affordable for most people. And I know they're looking at coming back with another definition now because there's been so much negative pushback to how that definition will take money away from municipalities and their ability to support building the infrastructure we need for housing, and also take away money that could be invested into more deeply affordable housing. And I just want to quickly just say how important it is not only that we build more deeply affordable housing, we build more housing supply in the communities we love, but we also have to increase social assistance rates. You know, I'm a supporter of more than doubling ODSP and OW. I think the housing allowance for social assistance should be where average market rents are, and then we should, you know, increase the living allowance to bring people above the low income cutoff line. Because even like how can somebody on $1,300 a month, if you're on ODSP, survive when average rents in many cities, including places like Guelph, Kitchener, even higher in Toronto, are now over $2,000 for a one bedroom apartment? Like, it's like the math just doesn't add up. And I think we can do better as a society and as a province to build more caring communities that ensures that everyone has a safe and affordable place to call home.
Yeah, in my time as a social worker, whenever anybody had housing as their top stressor, it really left us without a lot of avenues to move forward. Anytime somebody was in rent geared to income, you could tell that their stress just went down. Like, people's lives are hard enough when you don't have to worry about where you're going to live and buying food. You know, to me, a roof and food, like, that's not too much to ask. So definitely 30% of income. I also want to talk about attainable. Like, why can't we have two definitions? You know, I talked with the guy from Habitat for Humanity, and he was saying how, you know, even folks, you know, between the 60 to 100K, if you're a single parent, you know, getting into home ownership or whatever, that's kind of where they're looking to to bring people into that rung on the ladder. So to me, when we look at a housing continuum, we need lodging homes for folks who are very low income. Those are also, you know, not legal in so many parts of Ontario. Nobody wants to talk about lodging homes because, you know, poor people and there's stigma around mental health whatever else, right? But we need lodging homes all the way up to attainable home ownership, all the way up to the sprawl, which is really the focus of the Ford government. So, co-ops are a beautiful place. Bread and Roses in my ward, like you talk to the folks who live there, they deeply cherish their community. It's actually a really cost-effective way for people to live together. And there's a sliding scale like we have for a lot of our mental health services in town. Why can't it be a sliding scale where you pay a certain percentage of what you make and you can still live in your house if you make more, if you make less, and the rent adjusts accordingly. So yeah, I'd like to see us have a broader definition, but also honor that 30%.
We've got a couple of questions that I'll kind of combine here. Someone's wondering, why do you both think that the government opposes this type of development, referring to fourplexes and multiplexes? And then someone else is wondering about, does canceling a reading to defer it to committee happen just to couch the concept and rephrase it as PC made? And can this be sort of a win if that ends up happening?
Well, I'll start with the latter question first. And I think one of the things that inspired me to run for the Ontario Green Party was not only our commitment to climate action and guarantee livable income and stronger democracy, but it's also just the idea that we are going to prioritize people over politics. We're going to put what's good for our communities ahead of what's good for our party. And so my feeling has been that, if we put an idea out there or a bill out there and the government takes it and implements it as their own, I'm okay with that. I've always said the premier can steal all of our ideas. Like, they are free of charge. You could have them all. So if the reason the bill was discharged to committee so the government could put forward their own bill that's similar to what we've proposed, then I'm fine with that, as long as we legalize housing so we can start building homes that people can afford in the communities they love. And then on the question around why there might be some opposition, there are people who resist change in their neighborhood. And I tend to resist the, not in my backyard phrase, because some people can see it as maybe being critical or negative. Because there are some things you don't want in your backyard. Like, I don't want a big fossil gas plant in my backyard, or I don't want Highway 413 going through my backyard. So, there are a lot of things that people don't want in their backyard. But I think the thing I want to get across to folks is that look at the video that we did on legalizing housing, and look at how fourplexes, four-story, just integrate within existing neighborhoods. And if you look at a lot of our older neighborhoods, and I'll use Guelph, like I live right on the river in downtown Guelph, and as you walk around my neighborhood and the other neighborhoods adjacent to mine, all pre-World War II built neighborhoods, they're full of fourplexes. They're full of four-story buildings. Like, we used to build communities like this, and those tend to be communities that are more connected, more vibrant, support more local businesses. I mean, just up the street from me, I always tell everyone, there's like 4 multiplexes sort of forming this like little apartment complex that is literally right next door to the most expensive mansion in Guelph. So, and I don't think it like changes the character of the neighborhood at all. I think it's amazing that people who are on, like lower income rental units, homes, are literally right next to the wealthiest person in Guelph. Like, I think that makes our communities like really wonderful, connected, and beautiful places to live. And I think of kind of the isolation and loneliness that so many people are increasingly experiencing in our communities. And I think if we can start building neighborhoods that are more connected through gentle density and missing middle, I think it's a beautiful thing. And that's how we used to build in Ontario prior to World War II. And it was after World War II that this whole expensive sprawl agenda started to become more common. And then in the 70s or so is when a lot of the zoning restrictions that started to, make it illegal to build things like fourplexes and co-housing and rooming houses and things like that. And I think it's made our housing crisis worse, but I also think it's contributing to the loneliness that so many people are feeling being disconnected from their neighbors. So anyway, that's a
All right.
long way of saying that let's just say yes in my backyard. Let's say yes to having more neighbors and stronger, more connected communities.
All right. We have a question about, are you worried that increasing supply without regulations to quell speculation is pointless? And I know, Aislinn, this is something you're quite thinking about a lot with the speculators, so be interested to hear your perspective.
Perhaps, like, speculation is a problem. For sure, I mean, there could be, it's kind of one of those pros and cons, like I think of folks who are trying to get into housing, it's one way that they could afford to pay their bills. I think of seniors. I met a senior the other day who was overhoused but didn't want to move. So I think speculation is a huge issue that we're facing, and that requires tools as well. So definitely it's on our radar. It's something that we're going to be tackling over time. But it's a tricky thing because it's so embedded in our economy right now, with folks buying multiple properties. I mean, on the other hand, some of those smaller landlords can be better landlords in some cases. Like if I think of the REITs, we have a big corporate landlord in our community, and I've heard from so many of them at different buildings complaining about the way that the property's been deteriorated. They've applied for above guideline increases. So there's lots of ways in which the big shareholder type landlords like REITs and numbered companies can put the squeeze on tenants, whereby if you think of a fourplex, that's not usually the same kind of corporate landlord. I can't say that they would be great landlords per se, but I think it kind of democratizes that kind of rental property possibility. But you're right. I do agree that we need better policies to quell the speculation, because young people are competing against somebody who owns many properties.
Yeah, and if I could just add, I mean, that's one of the reasons we've proposed a multiple home speculation tax to really disincentivize these large companies who are buying up, like, in one case, 10,000 single family homes. And it's one of the reasons we support things like vacant home taxes, stronger regulations on short-term rentals, stronger rental protections like vacancy control and rent control, is to just disincentivize speculation. But another thing that will disincentivize speculation is actually increasing housing supply. We've had a decade now where our population has grown faster than housing supply. And so that means we just have a shortage of homes. And that then creates incentives for speculators to purchase more homes because they know the cost of those homes are going up so fast that they can cash in. But if we can increase supply, that disincentivizes speculation, because it's going to really tamp down on the escalation of housing prices.
All right, I think this is our last question for the night. When it comes to fourplexes, multiplexes, mid-rise apartment buildings, what are the cost barriers to building this type of housing?
Go ahead. You go first because you're the city councilor, then
just
I'll talk about the other side.
Yeah, and from like my learning as a city councilor and talking to a lot of planners, is the beauty of the 4-story walk-ups is you don't need an elevator. You can build it with wood and not cement. So there's lots of ways in which it's, I think, a little bit cheaper and more good for the climate to build this kind of thing. So that's kind of what I know. And like, just to plug, I have like an 8-story building going in near my house, and it was an abandoned electro home factory that just sat vacant for so long. So like, I think if the city hadn't approved that, and that's a lot of red tape that we could move off of the plate just to make units cheaper. So just by making this not an issue that comes to council, it saves you time, and it saves a lot of the red tape and the funds that people have to pay to get approvals for stuff like this. So yeah, for me, what it means is better utilization of land that we already have. It makes the housing more affordable because you don't have so much time and so much red tape. And like the walk-ups just require a lot less in terms of the construction costs, and the construction price index. So there's the consumer price index that's kind of like plateaued, gone down to like 3%, but construction price index is still at 8%. I mean, cement's gone up, it's like doubled. Like most municipalities, if you're paying higher property taxes, it's because cement, like, and it's the worst for the planet. Like if we could just get rid of cement, a little bit. So that's kind of like a little bit of my 2 cents about why this type of building in particular is a good fit.
Yeah, and I would just add that for municipalities, it's much cheaper because you're utilizing existing infrastructure. So you're not having to build more sewer lines, water lines, roads, power lines, etc. So it significantly reduces costs for municipalities. If we can legalize housing, as Aislinn said, it speeds up the approval process. I had one company that specializes in multiplexes tell me that Bill 156 alone would cut their approval times in half, which would then be just make it less make the homes more affordable, or in the case of apartments, make the rent more affordable. And then in the cases of fourplexes, especially if we can start designing them in ways where they're panelized or modular, you can start doing a lot of the construction indoors in quote factories, which significantly lowers the cost and also improves working conditions for workers, because you're not out working on a construction site in the middle of winter. I've toured a number of these factories, and they just are ergonomically easier for the workers. So it just reduces like workplace stress, injuries, things like that. And it speeds up the construction, which again makes them more affordable for folks. And then the final thing I'll say, and this is where I really appreciate Mike Morris, who's the federal MP for Kitchener Center. If we're going to do this, we have to make sure that all 3 levels of government are aligned in their policies. And I was surprised to learn in promoting Bill 156, like I thought I'd studied housing so deeply. And then like I had one of my first meetings and somebody's like, do you know that the federal government through CMHC will not finance a triplex or a fourplex? They only finance 5plexes or higher. So it's a huge barrier to like people. Like if you and 3 other families want to get together and build a fourplex, where you could each have a home, like CMHC won't finance that. And so Mike Morris, I asked him to ask the housing minister federally about this, and the minister responded, yes, we're looking at it. Yes, we realize it's a problem, which to me just seems so strange because the federal government's going around saying we need to build fourplexes, and then CMHC is not financing those fourplexes. So to me, it's just an example of how I think we could all work together, like across party lines, across all 3 levels of government, to come up with ways that we can more quickly build homes that people can afford in the communities they know and love.
And I just like to advocate when we talk about all levels of government, that also means municipal. So while, don't get me wrong, I want you to reach out to your MPP and ask them to support this, I also think you need to talk to your mayor, your city councilor, because those 2 levels of government are really intertwined. And so we need the buy-in across the political spectrum.
Were those all the questions, James?
That's everything. That's everything. Feel free to
Great.
people.
So I just want to wrap up then and just say thank you all for joining us. And I just think it's been fantastic for me now. It's my first week have both Aislinn and me, the double-sized Green caucus, working hard together. And I think you've seen us, people have always said the Ontario Greens punch well above our weight. And I think our housing plan, which many people have called the masterclass plan in delivering the solutions we need. I saw one of the most respected economists on housing in the entire country say on social media about a month ago that the Ontario Greens have the best housing plan of any political party in the country. And I think it's because we're just dealing with it along the entire continuum of housing needs, all income and demographic levels. We've really thought through it. And I feel like we've been able to double our influence and our impact now that Aislinn's joined me at Queen's Park. And I just want to say to all of you that you can make a huge difference in helping us do the work we do. The only reason we were able to work together to save the Greenbelt was because of people power. It was really because of the kinds of folks who are listening in tonight who demanded that the Premier keep his promise not to open the Greenbelt for development. And that's what it's going to take to bring forward the kinds of solutions we need to address the housing crisis. And so please write your MPP, call your MPP, email your MPP, go to gpo.ca and sign our petition. Aislinn and I delivered a number of postcards today to Queen's Park that people from around the province had signed saying legalize housing. Look forward to Aislinn's private members bill, which is going to be all about protecting renters that she's going to be bringing forward for debate next month. And just help us keep the pressure up on this government because people can't afford to wait any longer. We just have to start building homes that people can afford instead of having a government that's putting forward housing policies. It's all about how wealthy, well-connected insiders can cash in on their speculation, basically. And so stay in touch with us, keep speaking out, and keep giving us your ideas, asking your questions so we can be a more effective voice for you at Queen's Park. And thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you.